everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Brandon Bonanza Show. I'm very excited for today because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is Dune and the Dune universe. And I have a guest that we're going to talk about all that stuff with. But before I introduce the guest, I'm just going to bring up today's quote. And here we go. Today's quote. When religion and politics travel in the same cart, the riders believe nothing can stand in their way. Their movements become headlong, faster and faster and faster. They put aside all thoughts of obstacles and forget the precipice does not show itself to the man in a blind rush until it's too late. And this is from the Dune book, of course, written by Frank Herbert, but this was said by Lady Jessica. Lady Jessica, yes. So it's going to be actually come important later in the discussion when we're quoting Lady Jessica. But my guest today is Jeff. What's up, man? How's it going?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I'm good. Happy to see you and looking forward to our talk.
Yeah, I'm excited too. So today, just so everybody knows, we're going to be talking about the differences between Dune 2, the movie, because we both just recently saw it, and what happens in the books. So there might be some spoilers here. So if you haven't seen the movie or you plan on doing it, just watch out for that. And if you haven't read the book and you're interested in reading the book, this is going to be the perfect episode for you because we're going to talk about it a little bit. We might spoil some things in the book, but honestly, once you start reading the book, you probably forget about all the stuff we said until you get to this point. Because that's the first difference here that we're going to cover is that the Dune 2 movie, there's actually three parts to the Dune book and the first original Dune. So, of course, there's so many volumes about the future and the past of the Dune universe written by Frank Herbert and also by his son and Kevin J. Anderson. So after Frank died, uh, his son, what's his son's first name again?
Brian,
There we
Brian
go.
Henderson.
Yeah, I should know that. Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson took on the role of creating in the Dune universe. I'm sorry, they finished Frank Herbert's original Dune story, and then they went back and did prequels and all kinds of stuff. So I'm sure we'll probably get into that a little bit, or even in future episodes because we do plan to talk more about Dune. But I will say, for my part, I went to see the Dune 2 movie, and I think it was a really good movie. If I was just going to go see a movie and it was labeled something else or I had no idea about Dune, I would have enjoyed it. I didn't need to know that it was Dune. There were a lot of differences. I will say that I don't, you know, I have a friend that was like really pissed off about it, and I understand. I understand the differences they make, and it's not like I'm happy with the representation that the movie Dune 2 did for the book. But as a standalone movie on its own, I think it was pretty good. There were some really good effects. It was fun to see. But the differences that we're going to get into, obviously you guys will see. But I just want to say that off the start. I think it was a pretty good movie. But of course, we had issues with it, and there's some things we're going to talk about, probably psychology and all that stuff involved. But what were your takes? What did you think originally, or what did you think when you saw the movie?
Um, I watched it yesterday, so it's pretty fresh in my memory, and it was very enjoyable. I love the setting and everything. I'm an architect to be, so this is really important for me, space and all. The Harkonnen homeworld, Gidi Prime, oh, amazing. So dark, so so powerful, the slavery, the it's like a Berlin nightclub, like a nightclub in Berlin. It's cool. I love it. Um, yeah, there were things that made me a bit sad. I love romance and war movies and all, and the war movie thing was there, the fighting, but the romance, yeah, it's sad. It's not there anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Sorry, my phone. I forgot to put my phone on vibrate. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I do like the way that they portrayed GD Prime, even though, again, it's not going to be exactly what the books say. So,
Yeah.
and that's, of course, the point of all this. But like I was saying earlier, the way that they shot it and the way all the different archetypes were kind of represented with the Harkonnens on GD Prime and on Arrakis as well toward the end or middle of the end, I guess. Middle,
Hmm.
not the end. I guess the end would be the Emperor and the Sardaukar. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think they did a really
Mhm.
good job with that, establishing kind of like an archetype. Now, the differences that I see in the movie, we could even start with like say the Harkonnens. I think in the books, the Harkonnens are portrayed as more incompetent and their troops are just kind of like doing what they have to do. You know, they have this guy that will kill them, Baron Harkonnen. He's pretty bad. He's pretty brutal. If you fuck up, he pretty much just kills you and hides your body or whatever. Or I guess you didn't have to hide the body. But in the movie, they're portrayed as like stormtroopers, as kind of like badasses. Of course, not as crazy as the Fremen, but I think that they're uh, in the book, the better representation, of course, is that they're just incompetent, and it reminds me of there's like an essence of like a parody or even like comedy in the book to it, kind of like a comic book theme that you don't really see in the movie. And I think that's kind of an overall arcing theme in the movie. They don't really have the humor that the book does. A lot of the humor in the book, I think, is kind of implied or whatever. It's not like an outright comedy or whatever. But in the book, it's just, I'm sorry, in the movie, it just seemed a lot more serious than you get in the books. Of course, the book tackles all the crazy thing like murders and plots and intrigue and all this stuff, but they do it more. I feel like from a point of view of kind of like Game of Thrones, or not that Game of Thrones actually invented it, but you see more of a like a medieval type of government and functioning going on, but in a futuristic space setting, which I really like. And in Dune, the movie, I feel like it's you have the titles and everything, but it more is just like a Star Wars or like a space movie kind of.
Yeah. Now that you talk about it, um, I believe there's a bit of a competition with that old Dune movie with Sting, because it was a bit of that I don't know, like how to say, cyberpunk, or no, it was different, right? This rock punk sci-fi thing, and maybe it was a bit of eradicating the memory about that to be more badass without being so silly, with the plugs pulling out and stuff. And um yeah, I don't know, like the Baron was really cool, and the Baron in the book, just for the Baron, reading everything about the Harkonnens is just so rewarding, because the Baron is so well made, and the backstory. I don't know if you want to tell a bit about it. I don't want to say a bit about it, because it's so wonderful to find out who the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen really is. It's such a cool character, so badass. Um, I cannot hate him. He's just badass.
Yeah. Well, that's what I like about the books. You get the perception, you get the perspective of all these characters, especially if you read the prequels
Yeah.
and you look into some of the the other stories and stuff. You get to see because Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, everybody, he didn't start off as like this fat guy. He was actually when he was younger, even
Poisoned, right?
up to like his 40s or whatever, he was very in shape, tall guy, muscular. Um, and it had to do with the conception of Lady Jessica, who is his daughter. Spoiler alert for everybody. It had to do with that conception because she was conceived with a Bene Gesserit, Reverend Mother in Harkonnen, and I guess he was Baron Harkonnen was like really, really crazy with her. If you want to get the full detail, you can go and read it. But the Bene Gesserit needed a child from Baron Harkonnen, and of course, this is way before Dune. This is when Harkonnen Baron was a little younger, but he was still running his house. And so the Bene Gesserit needed a daughter. They made a deal. They sent their Reverend Mother there. Uh, and he was just brutal to her. We'll just say he was really brutal to her and treated her really bad, but he did impregnate her. So she left some kind of uh, disease inside him that made him
Hmm.
fat and just made him fatter no matter what. So that's pretty much what happened to
Yeah,
Mr. Baron Vladimir Harkonnen.
yeah. I think
Which
it
one?
was in the House Atreides novel.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The House
Yeah.
Atreides, House Harkonnen, and House Carino novel
Mhm.
series is where they explain all this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's another thing that really stuck out, and other people were talking about this, that the movie streamlined. That there are other characters, other story lines that are left out. And I think it's all right with the movie, but it robs the 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 whole universe of its richness. I think it doesn't miss. It's not missing in that movie, but still, yeah, it's a bit sad.
What were the ones that stuck out to you the most that were missing?
Um, I'm a big fan of the Mentats, like the guy in the first movie who rolled the eyes back, the black guy. The calculations and all. I think this is such an amazing concept. Um, but yeah, maybe it's not the time for that. Maybe it can be expanded on later. I don't know.
Well,
But I like that
talk
storyline.
we could talk a little bit about because that's Thufir Hawat, and in the book, Thufir Hawat was known as the Master of Assassins. And he only shows up in the first movie, and he doesn't really look like a Master of Assassins to me. He looks more like a happy, fun guy. It's like, hey, Paul, what's up? He's
Yeah.
all jolly and round, which is kind
Hmm.
of funny. So there's a difference right there. And then also in the Dune 2 movie, he does not show up. So in the book, what ends up happening is when the Atreides are attacked by the Harkonnens and Duke Leto is killed, the forces are scattered, and Thufir Hawat was out of town or whatever, so he had a bunch of guys with him. They tried making it back, and I believe they got attacked by the Sardaukar, and Thufir Hawat was taken prisoner, and Vladimir Harkonnen ends up telling him that it was Lady Jessica that betrayed the Atreides, and then he also offers Thufir Hawat a job to try to get revenge or whatever. So we have Thufir Hawat working for the Harkonnens in the book. I'm sorry, yeah, in the book and not in the movie. In the movie, they just don't even talk to him. They only bring back Gurney Halleck,
Yeah.
and that part I just went over that part in the book again, and that was a lot different than the movie as well. In the movie, it's kind of similar how it happens, but in the book, when they come across Gurney Halleck, it is Paul that confronts him right away, and then he has him stop fighting. So they do save some of the men, and there end up being some Sardaukar spies in there that get dealt with. And Paul lets one of them live, or maybe more than one. He lets them live, and he sends them back to go tell the Emperor when the Emperor finally arrives on Arrakis. He sends those Sardaukar back to him.
Yeah, so warning, I guess it was
Yeah,
strategic thinking already. Yeah. Yeah, and the so many changes. And I believe um the changes they have the potential to change the story in a way like Watchmen was changed, or the other Alan Moore movies, because the meaning is totally different than in the beginning or in the end. It can be totally different, and I'm really looking forward to that. Um, it had a lot to do with this woman, Johnny, because the love story is totally different. It's basically non-existent, not like it exists in the book. Such a perfect love they have in the book, and there it doesn't exist. It's so sad. Like the last scene where she's just by herself, the strong, independent woman walking away from the
yeah,
bad man,
from the
and
back,
it's not how it is in the book.
not at
No.
all. Yeah, Yeah, that was probably one of the worst changes that they made,
Mhm.
the relationship between Paul and I call her Cheney. So I guess in the movie they call her Chani, from what I've
Mhm.
heard. But anyway, and I that all starts. So the change with Cheney starts even before Cheney, because in the movie, well, let's say in the book, Dr. Liet Kynes is Cheney's father. Now, Dr. Liet Kynes is the son of Pardo Kynes, who is a planetologist who was sent to Arrakis by the Emperor, by Shaddam's father. I forget his name,
Yeah.
but it's before Shaddam took control. So he was there. Pardo Kynes gets in there. He kind of goes native a little bit, marries a Fremen wife, has a son, Liet. Liet then takes on, he goes to the Imperial School or whatever he has to do, and he takes on that same title. So he becomes the planetologist, but he still has this kind of unknown, sort of known connection to the Fremen. It's like people kind of know, but they don't. They talk about it, but they don't. And in the book, we have Liet Kynes being a lady with no connection that's mentioned at all to Cheney. So right there, it ruins it, because you have this story of a people living and surviving in the desert, these badass people, and then all these outsiders come. So the first one is Pardo and then Liet. So they laid the groundwork for Paul, which is, I think,
Mhm.
really an important thing that they missed. So it's not like this guy, um, Paul Atreides, just comes out of nowhere, with just the prophecy. So in the book, he has the foundation laid and by mistake, and
Mhm.
the the dialogue between Leah Kynes and Paul in the book is amazing too. Leah Kynes, but this, of course, is in the first movie, so I'll just touch it quickly. But Leah really kind of gives his devotion to him and sees how he is really fitting into this prophecy, and also that he is a compassionate person, and really has the same kind of goals in mind that Dr. Leah Kynes has in mind. But of course, then we move on to Cheney, and yeah, I think what you said is amazing. You see a love story in the movie, but the way that they, because so what happens in the movie is you have the same thing that happens in the book. Paul attacks the Emperor's men that are in Arrakeen on Arrakis, and
Mhm.
at the end they're all together. So there are differences about how that happens.
Mhm. Mhm.
No Saint Aaliyah of the knife. We'll talk about that next. Maybe no Aaliyah. And so Paul kills Emperor. I'm sorry, Paul kills Vladimir Harkonnen. Then he has that meeting with the Emperor and stuff. And Cheney's there, and it gets decided that Paul's going to marry the Emperor's daughter, Princess Irulan, and that's how he's going to take over. But in the book, he specifically tells Cheney even before, and I guess in the movie he says it too, there's no one else for me. But in the book,
Yeah.
he's like, listen, this is just going to be in name only. This lady will have none of my love, none of my affection. I won't even touch this lady. She's going to have a terrible non-love existent life. You're going to have the best life. You won't have the name of my wife, is what Paul tells Cheney. I won't call you my wife outright, although I think they do get married in the books. But it's not like it's going to be his empress or whatever, but you're going to
Yeah.
be the father of my children. And they also have a baby in the book.
Yeah. And they lose the baby, and this is the beginning
Yeah.
of their
But
jihad.
yeah, I think that's also an important thing that they didn't talk about. Obviously, because there's this another difference in the movie and in the book, is in the book, 2 years go by from when Paul gets
Mhm.
hung out, met up, whatever, taken over, or hangs out with the Fremen. When he meets Stilgar, you have like 2 years go by before all the events at the end of the movie happen. So,
Yeah.
just like in Lord of the Rings, it happened in the movie too. There's this huge time that they skip. They
Yeah.
skip this time thing. So in that 2 years, Paul and Cheney are just building this great relationship. They have a son, and then unfortunately that son does die. But that also, like you said, it sets the whole mood for the jihad, because they have this dead child. And in the movie, I'm sorry, in the book, Paul and Cheney end up together, and they're like super in love. So I don't, I guess we could talk about some of the differences that somebody that just went to see the movie, how
Yeah.
they feel just leaving, seeing that happen.
Um, the thing is, it changes everything about Paul. about the whole role that he plays, about the power structure and everything, the teleology, the end goal of the story is absolutely totally changed with that. Because like this, how it is in the movie, how I see it, there's this guy. He comes to the indigenous people. He's powerful. He takes over. He's the the white man who takes everything. The cultural appropriation. Now, of course, they don't say that, but let's be very drastic about that and paint that picture. Then he has this girl. He takes that girl, and then yeah, he's power hungry. He wants his revenge. He wants the power. Even in the end, where the Landsrod, the spaceships, they don't accept him as the new emperor, and then he says like, "Yeah, Fremen, go fuck him up." This is totally different, and it's totally different. So he's portrayed like he wants the power then, and he's made by his mother and all this. It's not like that. The book is very different. It is, it's a tragedy. It's a tragic story. There's this boy, and he's a youth still. He's 14 or something. I think she's a bit older than him, if I remember correctly. A bit more mature, like girls are in puberty, and then they kind of like find each other interesting and so. And it's a very tribalistic thing as well, when I remember right. It's not like this courting or all, but it's like, oh yeah, he's the man, he's interesting, powerful, whatever. And then she admires him, and then they trip together. They're tripping. They
Yeah, the
take some
spice.
spice. Yeah, yeah, they take some good old spice, and then they make love while they're on spice, and they are splicing their minds together, and they have a shared vision of their baby boy, and that they're meant to be. And it's an everlasting love that they have. And I think this is so pure. They are both forming that bond. They're impressing each like one into the other's mind and all. It's so powerful. And yeah, and the thing is, he later yeah, the boy dies. It's like one of the bombardments, if I remember right, where you have this in the movie, these epic bombardments, with the spaceship before the rock, and
Yeah,
um
they bombard the CH, the Harkness.
blasting the
Yeah,
AS rock to shreds.
yeah, yeah.
And this is when, like, one of these things is when the boy dies. And I remember when I read this, oh man, I was that really fucked me up, man. I got
Yeah.
so emotional. It felt like I'm losing my own child or something, and like really that fear and all that and that pain. And Frank Herbert did such a good job. So guys, read the book. This is something that the movie can never replicate. Maybe they understood that. Maybe that was the unfilmable part. I don't know.
Yeah.
But really, yeah,
I was just going to say really quickly, yes, yes, read the book. Also, listen to the audiobook if you're not a big reader. The
oh yeah.
audiobook is great. They have different characters, and it's great. But what I was going to say is the difference. Oh, did I lose my train of thought? You were talking about the baby dying and stuff. Yeah, it'll come back to me. But um yeah, I think the way that Frank encapsulated all that's what I was going to say. See, whenever I try to just go on to something else, it'll jump back to me. What Frank did, I'm sorry, what they did in the movie, you could say to yourself, and you could be like, well, it's a movie. They only have like 2 hours and 45 minutes to pack in. Like, I mean, how long is the book? Like 40 hours, right? So they have like 20 hours of material to pack into 2 hours. So, of course, they're going to have to cut stuff out. But when you really look in the details of the stuff they cut out, in the changes that they made, it's kind of like, again, I mentioned Lord of the Rings earlier, but a thing that I noticed upon reading all the Lord of the Rings books and then watching the movies kind of side by side was that a lot of the characters in Lord of the Rings, Aragorn specifically in the books, basically knew he wanted to be the king the whole time. That's what he was doing. He was trained
Mhm.
for it. It wasn't
Mhm.
really a doubt unless he died, but in the movie he was more of like a he was more feminized, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
like, and when I'm talking about masculine and feminine, these are different energies and stuff we talk about. So, but he was acting a lot more like a victim as well in the movie, and he wasn't
Hmm.
sure if he was going to be good enough to do it and all this stuff. So you might be like, oh, whatever, it's just a small little change. But the way that I see the world, especially with victim narrative, people always like to play the victim. And then when you see Hollywood kind of playing along with it, maybe it just makes characters relate to people better, and that's what they tell themselves. But when it comes to Dune, I think you're right. This is one of the major, major things, right? Is Paul and Cheney and how it ends. In the end of the book, she's just leaving and he's not trying to stop her or anything. And we could probably encompass this difference to talk about the Fremen as well, compared to how they were in the book and how they are in the movie, because in the movie you get this idea that there's these Fremen in the north and there are these Fremen in the south, and the ones in the
Yeah.
south are these like religious fanatics. And it feels like, we've talked about this in the past, how I don't think on a podcast, but we've talked about how Frank Herbert really looked at the Muslim faith and the religion and kind of added it in to the Fremen. And it looks like the people who are making the movie were also doing that, but in the current parlance. So they're like, oh, these are the natives that are crazy. The ones down south, like they're the ones that'll go suicide bomb things and stuff. They're the what do they call them? In modern day, they call them fundamentalists or whatever, right? These are the
Yeah.
fundamentalist ones. Whereas in the North, then that's what Cheney was. She, I guess, wasn't like a true believer or whatever.
Yeah, of course, and they don't believe in the Messiah and all that, right? And the one, he's praying, the leader,
Bilgar.
and then they're babbling, not honoring all that. The men are praying, and the women are, "Bah, bah, 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 we don't give a shit." Like it's just this that's it's about the little things that have the impact. The big things we see them immediately, and we discard them. It's the little things that change our perception. So. Yeah, totally. I believe it's the only way to kind of portray that there was not a homogeneous Fremen society. Because in the book, of course, there's so much more. He's going here and there and riding on his worm to some settlement and collecting them all. And um, yeah, of course, the adaptation has to shorten it a bit. I think it's all right, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, also, I think just the way the Fremen are portrayed in the movie as opposed to the books, it's kind of like, even still, especially Stilgar. It's kind of like they took all the silliness out of the Harkonnen way of doing things and they added it
Mhm.
and made it more serious. And then
Yeah,
that silliness and
yeah,
added it
yeah.
to Stilgar, because Stilgar has this weirdness about him. He's like, yeah, just go over there and climb those dunes and go live over there for a little while and come back. You'll be fine. Like
Hmm.
in the book, they had a much, I don't know, more like camaraderie. They were like
Hmm.
comrades in the book. They had this better relationship. It was more friendship, but you also get to see the difference between somebody who was raised on the civilized world, meaning Dune. I'm sorry, meaning Paul. He was raised in Caladan
Hmm.
and he was considered civilized. And then you have Stilgar, who's the naive, which is like the leader of
Hmm.
his Sietch, which would be a Sietch Tabor. So he's the leader of that. And like I was saying in the book, you get this meeting of minds where they're both really intelligent people, but they just have different ways of
Yeah,
doing things. And you get to see that. Whereas in the movie, it's kind of like the silly thing where Stilgar's just like running around in the background, like riding worms and stuff. Like it
yeah,
was
yeah. That's what I mean. That there are a lot of woke elements in there. Because I mean, it's so cool that they have the cast, like part of the cast from No Country for Old Men in there. I don't know if people recognized who Stilgar is. It's the killer.
he's the bat. Yeah, that's right. I
Yeah,
didn't realize
yeah.
that.
And he's so cool, man. I like that. That's the thing I liked about the Fremen or Free Men. that they are much more greedy in a sense than the older movies where they were also good looking and all. Yeah, different times. But yeah, you're right. There's like the slapstick in there, which is it's fun. You know, when they draw the water from the soda car in the beginning,
Oh yeah.
and Lady Jessica's throwing up, and the slapstick moment, like kind of Monty Pythonish. I enjoyed it, but it's not at all what they are because this is exactly what they are not. They are not fun people. They are all about survival. They are their skin is leathery and they have no water in their skin and they're hardened and everything. And but there is a beauty, a healthy beauty in them and all these things. It's and Stilgar, I depicted him as a fatherly figure. He was like he was rugged. He was so old, a really old man, but he was so powerful that Paul didn't dare to challenge him. And when he would have challenged him or would have had to challenge him to be the leader in order to be able to speak, he was not sure if he would defeat him, if I remember it right, and he didn't want to. He had the respect and the love. He was like a father that he lost, and all these things, and a comrade, and so yeah, it's really yeah how to be depicted in a short movie like that or adaptation, but yeah, it's a depth. It's a certain depth that is missing.
Yeah, and of course you're going to get that in any movie adaptation of a book. The one of the biggest things is you don't really get the internal. Well, I don't think you get at all the internal dialogue. And Dune is lives for their internal dialogue. I mean, I think
Yeah,
Dune, the book, it's kind of like an education on how you should feel internally, and like it's stuff we're never taught in school or anything like that. I mean, you have to look, I guess, towards spirituality for this kind of stuff. But it really is just about what face you're presenting forward when you're talking to people. It's so interesting in the book, all these different things, and it makes you kind of think about how much more mature these people really are than
yeah,
the average run-of-the-mill person these days. But something you said that I think is really important is that you enjoyed certain elements of the movie and you did enjoy the movie, which I think is
yeah,
important because we
a
could just
lot.
get up here and we could say, oh, this movie sucked because of this, and they're taking the message out, and how dare they? But I feel like that's kind of a victim stance to look at it. That's why I wanted to do
Yeah.
a podcast just to highlight the differences and then try to get people. Go ahead. I was just going to say try to get people to read the book, but anyway, we're going to say go ahead.
Yeah, that's the exact thing because we were talking before we recorded um, that it's not entirely clear if the changes um, change the whole story, if they destroy the story, like I might have emphasized, or if a story is something different entirely. If a story is an entity of itself, even that and it wants to be retold. We were always sold, yeah, no, it's not totally faithful to the original story, but maybe the story was always there, and Frank Herbert tried to tell the story, and some things didn't get through totally, and now it's maybe retold better even. So the question, do we have a right to saying this is my original story, or is it everybody's right to retell it? Because yeah, I see a different story than you probably. I take a lot of different things from it than you or anybody else. So I think it's beautiful, and um it opens the possibility. Before that movie, for example, we were talking about who are the Bene Gesserit and this and that, and trying to um, find a principle or a order or something that's in our world, like the Jesuits and whatever, and all these things, or like these are the Muslims, these are the Catholics, all these things. And I think with the movie now, we can see a different thing. how the spirit, the zeitgeist changes over like a decade or 2 decades, and like with the original book, the first adaptation, the second, and this adaptation, and then we can read in between the lines and have really valuable insights regarding our world. Oh, it's a cat.
Yeah, it's my. I have two black cats. He's got thumbs. It's Thumper. He likes to make appearances on my show. Yeah,
That
I,
is so
I
cool.
like that because I was thinking something similar to that, which was the other day I was thinking about the Dune movie versus the book. And it just is like it's kind of like if something happened in the past, just history, for example, right? We have no idea because we weren't there. Let's take the American Civil War, right? And there's so many stories and movies and stuff. So I like this movie. It's kind of just a retelling of something that might have happened. And it's just a
Mhm,
shorter form and it's maybe like a
mhm,
secondhand story that you would get. And then think of the people like back in the
mhm,
times of like in the medieval times, or just any time before electricity when you didn't have movies and stuff. People would have to tell stories and they would have this epic telling and you'd have bards and they put it to music and stuff. And no bard is going to tell any story the same way. So you get basically the gist of everything that happened. So seeing the Dune movie, it's kind of like somebody who knew what happened and heard about it secondhand from somebody else. So then they made a movie about it. So you get a lot of the main elements are the same. And the other thing that I'm
mhm,
grateful for the movie is that it's going to awaken people's thirst for knowledge of Dune. Not everybody
yeah.
that sees the movie is going to go want to look at the book or listen to the book or read it, but maybe even if it's a small percentage, you're going to get those people that are going to wake up to the ideas and read the books and maybe get a better handle on just their own life. The thing I talk about the most on my channel and my other show, the Oversharing show, we talk about is really like self healing and going within and know thyself and just different ways to improve yourself. And in
Mhm,
these Dune books, you have this all. It's just kind of understood. Like I was saying before, the way the characters act and interact with each other, it really makes you think. Because if I was younger, say I came across this at like 13 or 14, which I didn't come across Dune, I might have seen the movie or something. Because I was born in 76. So I probably I think I saw parts of the movie back then. But if I had read that, it would just like open my mind to wait a minute. I could, work about controlling my emotions and I don't have to show everybody when I'm mad. And, like I could, look
mhm.
at things in a different way. I don't have to just go with what my, I guess, ego or whatever says. So I'm glad for it in that way. And like you said too, the other thing where it just highlights what the Bene Gesserit is, or it highlights like with a sandworm, you get to see sandworms flying across and smashing
Yeah,
into things, and
yeah.
you get to see Duncan Idaho in action and all these fun things. So it might not be your idea of what happened in the book, but it's something you can point to. And another cool thing is like if you have friends that you think might be into it, you can have them watch the movie
Yeah,
and then you could
yeah,
get into the books perhaps. So that's I kind of try to look at the positive things these days. I'm always pointing toward the positive things.
yeah.
Uh, so I don't have to sit there like I said earlier and be like, oh, look at how they fucked up this movie and it's so terrible and they're so bad.
That's a thing that you said right now is the very best thing about the movie, the sandworms, the Shai Halud. This is genius how they represented them. Now finally we can see him how they like that, how he's calling the first one, and then he's running on the dune, and then he's like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna catch it, motherfucker, and then he jumps down, and then he gets swallowed, and it's like that struggle, and it really gave me that impression that like, man, it's just a few steps, it's like have the stomper, then stand away far enough, then jump on it, and all these. But it's so fast, and then we see how much skill it takes. It's just a life or death situation, and it's just beautiful, man. It's really really cool. This is totally, they nailed it. In my opinion, they nailed the sandworms. It's beautiful. Like that they finally could. This is what I mean. Like the story of the sandworm finally could come through our collective consciousness. It's like Frank Herbert. He might have kind of like channeled the story, and then but
Hmm.
it was so alien of a concept. And then people try. This is the thing, this maybe why art gets better. People try and then they try and then there's a new thing, and it's like the 100th ape, where they
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
washing the potato in the ocean and it's salty and stuff like that. And this is beautiful about the movie. It's a piece of art regarding that, definitely.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I agree. I like the way that a lot of stuff was portrayed. And now you get that in the consciousness what the sandworm is. Because before you'd have to go
mhm.
see like Beetlejuice or something, the Beetlejuice
Yeah,
with like the
yeah.
claymation
Oh,
sandworms or
yeah.
whatever, maybe you'd have an idea what sandworms are from there. But yeah, it is good when a show or whatever, a movie, I'm sorry, a book gets to be
Mhm,
highlighted on film or on screen somehow.
mhm.
But again, I think it is important to be aware of the differences too, because if you're just a regular moviegoer and you're watching this stuff, you're going to get into these ideas. Like you said, the wokeness. And what we mean is kind of like the political correctness that's going on. You see this a lot in different adaptations of like, in the Marvel universe and Star Wars and any of these things, like you said, Watchmen, all this stuff. You get a certain element come in where it's either like they think that, oh, there's too many white people or too many people this, or there's not enough women or not enough men. And for me, I would just say like, make your own story then. Make
Yeah.
another story that involves all characters that are green or purple or whoever, whatever color you like. So it is kind of annoying when that happens because you might like Dr. Kynes, for example, they made her a black female instead of a white dude. Which okay, fine, whatever. I don't care. I mean, as long as they get the job done, it's not like I'm racist or anything. But as opposed to the story, they took somebody who was supposed to be the father of Cheney and
Mhm.
made her a woman without made him into a woman without any of the connecting to that. And I think that's something they could have easily connected into the movie. They could have made Cheney the offspring of Leah Kynes. We'll just say it that way. Um, so I think that, and then also again, like you said, the way that they portrayed the Fremen and the way they portrayed Paul, because he did look like he was just somebody who was an opportunist. Now, in the book, he kind of is an opportunist
Mhm.
because this superstition was planted, but he's, I don't know, he's going about it in a different way, and the people around him too. And one of the big ones, and the reason why I brought that Lady Jessica quote up to play was to show that because in the movie, Jessica's doing everything she can behind the scenes to try
Mhm.
to indoctrinate the Fremen people that her son Paul is their savior. And in the movie, this is something that she says.
Yeah.
It was that quote in the beginning. It's a
Mhm.
warning. It's when politics and religion ride in the same cart. And really, what that means, I don't think a lot of people have an idea of that. But years ago, when you had like a pharaoh or a Roman emperor, not only
Mhm.
were they the government leader, but they were the religious leader too. You had two in one. They were the embodiment
Mhm.
of God on this earth or plane or realm or whatever for the people to follow. And so it means they had like the okay of God and the people.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't think that people really understand the kind of power that people can wield like that. And that's what Paul is, you know, dealing with,
Mhm.
suffering with in the book and in the movie. This idea of fanatic people getting behind him. And I think they really highlight jihad and what jihad is about, not as far as how the Muslims mean it, but what they mean, the fanatical fervor that people get when they have a cause. If you look into the earlier, or not the earlier books, but the prequel books like the Butlerian Jihad,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the machines and all that stuff, and the jihad that is raised up against the machines that humans that they do. But I feel like that's something that we deal with in our current time frame, right? But again, it's something that's misrepresented because the United States has been at war with certain countries in the Middle East. I mean, for a long time, but as far as we could point back, open war, I guess we'd say, since like the early 90s, and then total
Hmm.
like just going into it since like 2001, then 2003 you have the Iraq the thing,
Yeah,
2001 they went to Afghanistan. So I feel like we have here in the United States, at least, we have kind of a missed or a false conception on how all that stuff works with like holy wars and all that stuff.
totally. Yeah.
But for them to see a tackle in the movie like that as opposed to the book, I don't know. I mean, I feel like the people that were making the movie were trying to make it for a Western audience that's going to be like compare the Fremen to like Muslims in the Middle East or whatever in the desert, and they just
Hmm.
try to simplify them down
Hmm.
as much as they can.
There is and now that you say it, there is a change that is so drastic. Um, Before we started recording, I watched like a 5 minute snipping of Frank Herbert talking about how his Arab friends talked with him and complimented him and asked why he did this and that, and that they really said, um, Arab Muslims, that they said it's more like a, yeah, a tafsir, more like a commentary uh, of the religion. And this is the thing. Um, we, I am not aware of any other story, and not that big as Dune, that has any good thing to say about the Islamic world. And I mean, there is all these titles. The very first book, like timeline wise, is the Butlerian Jihad, and they in the end of Dune 2, of that movie now, they say like now the crusade begins. The crusade is a Christian term, but they are beginning their jihad. And this is a different thing. Back then, Frank Herbert saw, and Islam back then was a very different thing. And we all don't know anything. We don't really know so much about Islam. I mean, you're in the States, I'm in Germany, and um, this is like everything is distorted about it, and we really have to dig deep. So what I want to say is that story tried to take Islamic elements and put them in a sci-fi um, context. Like, yeah, it's the future, but it's not just Western future, or like in Star Trek, Asian, where they're like Western people, and but they eat with chopsticks. No, they have their leader and of the military, and it's the Bashar. And all these things, like it's a part. Islam is part of humanity in Frank Herbert's depiction. But nowadays, if you put out a movie, I think that's the fear of the makers. If you put a movie out nowadays where they have the Fremen that everybody can see easily, that they kind of like the desert people and the tribes, and they rise up against the globalist power that exploits the planet for spice and whatever. Well, and then you say, oh yeah, those people, they defeated the powers, and now they go out into the universe and into the galaxy, whatever, and they started jihad. Ooh, maybe that could give some people ideas nowadays because it's so heated. So now the movie is trying to do the different thing. They are trying to leave out the Muslim thing. They're trying to make it a bit more funny, and oh, it's just their thing, or whatever. You know, so it has a taste. Of course, it's just a hypothesis, but it has the taste of it.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to give a mainstream, very like edited, like Cliff Notes version, if you will,
Yeah.
of the people in the desert, because they're, you just see like basically they just talk about the North and the South, like the Fremen in the North are different, the Fremen in the South are just more um by the book, and they're more fundamentalist, I guess you could say. So that's really what you
Yeah.
get. And yeah, like you said, in the book, especially the older ones, it's funny because the machines, one of the books is named The Machine Crusade. So the machines that are fighting the humans, they're on the crusade,
Yeah.
and the
Yes.
people are doing the jihad, right? Jihad,
Hmm.
right? Yeah. And
Yep.
it's amazing because and it's funny because if you think of the machine, what does a machine represent? If you're just looking at all this symbolically, it is the machine, right? The machine, which is the world or the mainstream or you know, the government, I guess you could say, even, or whatever it is, just that mainstream culture even could be the machine.
Yeah.
And the normal men and women would be the jihadists or the normal people.
Hmm. I
Very
mean, we should really because this is too big of a topic to fully cover this today. In the next episode, like the jihad, what jihad is, because it is. I mean, I don't want you to get canceled, but it's a beautiful concept.
Oh
It's
no,
really
yeah, it
is,
is. Go ahead, you could talk about it. It's I think
you know, and
they're loosening up a little bit with their restrictions here on YouTube, so I think we'll be
yeah.
all right.
Because like the jihad is like a strife, and there's like the big jihad, the small jihad, the big jihad, and all these, and um yeah, but I think it takes too much space, and then with the how it begins, um how the machines rise and all that, like what there's a lot of philosophies in there, and it's just beautiful, comical, and all. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, we could for sure do another episode and talk about that. I, I would say jihad, from what I understand, from what I heard, jihad is more like an internal war within yourself. It's just like spiritual warfare, I guess. This is from what I've heard, and you could correct me because you probably know more.
Yeah.
And it's just a concept. I think that maybe the differences between the little and the big, I'm not quite sure you could explain it, but I feel like the term jihad was taken and we say grabbled or misconstrued to be used for something to make Muslim people look evil.
Yeah, uh, as I understand it, both things are real. But I'm not sure. Yeah, it's a big thing. Um, there's one channel, YouTube channel. Let's Talk Religion, and I like to watch his videos, and it gives a good insight. But like really condensed, there is the strife, the inner strife, which I think Frank Herbert wanted to emphasize. That's why he made an amalgamation of Buddhism and Islam, like a pacified Islam, the um,
Zen Sunni.
the Zen Sunni. He had something with Shia as well, but I
Yeah, the
don't
Zen
recall that.
Zen Shia as well. And those are in the prequel, I guess, or in the
Yeah, the Buddhism, and they pray to Buddha.
Buddha. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it, and this is when people ask me something, I say that I pray to Buddha.
Zen Sunni. I'm a wanderer.
Yeah, and all, but it feels a whole episode because it's so big. It's like how the Fremen changed into the militant people because they were just enslaved with their pacifism and all these things. And um, but yeah, it's really this. Uh, yeah, the inner strife and all, and it shows how complex the whole topic is, um how little we know, and how dangerous it is to just put out a concept without proper explanation, you know just just putting out the Kabbalah without the Torah and the whatever, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this. It's dangerous because people might not see the nuances, might not be properly initiated into the concepts.
Yeah.
um,
It's the same thing as handing a Bible somebody to somebody that doesn't understand what
yeah.
like what allegory and all that is, and they take it literal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very,
So
very
I think it's justified to leave those things out in the movie. Of course, it robs it of a very vital dimension. Then again, I began to view the world in I love the works of Heidegger, Martin Heidegger, and he has this concept of Seinsvergessenheit. It's like being forgottenness or something, where people are not in the world, like really close to the core of the world. Basically, they're not Zen anymore. And there's the term called Gerede. It's like yeah, talk, chit chat, where all the people are talking just very shallow and no real depth to the conversation and all, like small talk, of course, yeah, small talk. But the beauty and that changed my worldview, and it helps me with enjoying movies, for example, and pop culture, because small talk is not, the victim connotation would be, oh yeah, they're not going into depth, and oh, they're doing me wrong because I know everything and they're too stupid to understand me. No, somebody who says that is real stupid, because it's about the people. We have the small talk and all these things, and the more surface level conversations and surface level movies, so that everybody can participate, because that's, we do that so because we want to take on board everybody should be able to say something, so everybody should be able to watch the movie and enjoy the movie, and take something from it, and those people who want to go deeper, they can go deeper because everything is there, and then they can think about it and can nerd about it, and um yeah, so that to me, that's really important, to outline that it's not a bad thing that a movie might be a bit more on the pop culture side. It's a beautiful thing. It's just the first gate out of
yeah.
many, and everybody has the one movie that does something to them. For me, it was The Matrix back then, like for many people, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Or Starship Troopers. Man, I watched it up and down, and those things do something, and then they set a pace, and then we are so obsessed, and we want to know more because it's not satisfying. If the movie was satisfying, then we would be yeah, satisfied, and then oh yeah, let's move on to the next thing. We don't think about it anymore. So I think it's a yeah.
Yeah, it has a wider reach the more quote unquote mainstream it is. And if you could bury some of these ideas in there, even just the idea of the gom jabbar is interesting, and it will open your
Mm-hmm.
mind because, like, wait, we don't want to think like an animal. We want to think like a human. Of course. And that's why I say go check out the books, because the scene, the gom jabbar,
Mm-hmm.
is so much better in the,
Yeah, it hurts, man. It hurts reading it. The hand does burn while reading
yeah.
it, mind you.
Yeah, and the whole
Really, yeah.
setup too. I think that's one of the first thing that happens in the Paul storyline, and it's a little different, I think, in the movie. But yeah, I love that stance. Right? It's like you got to take what you can get, unless you can go out there and make your own multi-million-dollar screen adaptation of Dune. Maybe you could do something animated. That'd be great. If somebody did that, I would love it. But since we're not going to get that, this is what we got. And I think it's better your time would be better served to pick out the good things. And then if you want, you start a podcast and you have one like we are, and you talk about the differences and you point people
Yeah.
that are interested. The people who are going to have questions, who are going to get on YouTube and type in Dune 2 differences, like what's the book. And that's really what this is for. It's to let people know, or maybe somebody who's read the book a long time ago, maybe it'll spark their interest to read it again.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm glad that you have that point of view also. I wasn't sure what your point of view was going to be after watching the movie, since you just watched it so recently. I watched it last week. I did see it twice though, but I saw it last week.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I guess overall, we could. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Other differences, or
Yeah, there's one thing and one thing to round up. Um, I really want to emphasize the ending with the love story
Yeah.
because that's something that people are so freaked out about, and maybe we would like to make an episode or a conversation about the whole thing with partnership and the because the Paul, he is a he's the boss, you know. And it's for us, it's so outlandish, you know. He's like, oh, he's marrying for the power and everything. This is what marriage was. Like what they depicted, what Frank Herbert depicted in the book. There's the love, you know, and then there's the political marriage. That's the normal thing. Like how we depict marriage nowadays. You know, oh, we love each other and all this, and we melt into each other. Mm, that this is so, like the red pill, black pill,
It was a
all
partnership.
these
It was
pills
like
and all these things.
a
Yeah,
true partnership, like a merging of families. But go ahead, go ahead. Yeah. I'll add more when you're done.
yeah, and this is something that they kind of left out. It's really um maybe it's disgusting for people, like, oh, now he takes the better woman and all, like Paul is hypergamous now, and all these
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
It's just not what the story is, and I think that is a bit sad. Of course it's okay, because when we dive deeper we see the other possibility how the story could be told, but I think that's a bit sad, that they left this out because it takes all the power of away from the male female relationships.
Yeah.
um,
And that's something I think is really important because just in my own relationship, I could see because my woman has said this to me that she didn't understand because, I had to go through a lot of work. I wrote a whole book about it. I'm working on a second one, guys. Shadowworked.com. Go check it out. The link will be in the video, don't worry, below. But I had to go through this whole thing and I had to balance my masculine energy and my feminine energy inside, and I had to meet my own needs and do all these things. And when I did that, I feel like I'm just a much better person. I'm a much better package as of a person. And it seems like a woman did take a lot of notice. And that's what my Elizabeth did say to me. She's like, I didn't think there were men like you around that still existed.
Beautiful,
And it's not
beautiful.
like some old school guy who's like misogynist and all this stuff. Although I do love to joke about misogyny, that's one of my favorite jokes to do because it's so people hate it so much. And I'm like, well, that's a
Yeah,
woman driving that car, isn't it? Like I'm always, but of course I'm just tongue in cheek, because I know there's plenty of guys that can't drive either. And I'm always like, yeah, but they're really women. No, but I had to do this work, and she noticed it. And I feel like for everybody, if you could become the best version of yourself or work toward that version of yourself, you're going to find somebody else. And if somebody else is also working toward that version of themselves, you can have this union and you can make this beautiful thing. And you can also make children and you could make the world a better place just by making yourselves better. And it really is understated because they left in the end. Basically, Cheney's like a single mom, because I'm
yeah,
surprised they didn't show that she was pregnant and then left
yeah,
pregnant. Like
yeah.
that might even be on the cutting room floor. Who knows? Maybe they're like, oh, that's going too far. But it really is telling everybody, oh, it's okay. You could be a single mom. And there's nothing, I'm not saying anything against single moms. I mean, things happen. People find themselves in situations. These aren't judgments. But when we're talking about media that's going to be consumed a lot by children who haven't had a relationship yet or haven't been married or whatever, they're going to be like, oh yeah, look, Cheney did it, she's on her own, it's fine, I don't need to find a man, I could do it all on my own, I'll just give up, I'll just give up and run away. And does giving up and running away ever really solve anything? What do you think, Jeff? Does that ever solve anything?
Nah, nah, it doesn't. For me, it never did. My is the great philosopher, Sugar Free said it in one of his rap songs. Wherever you go, there you are. So
You
yeah,
remind me
it's just,
of a different rapper, Shock G. You know who that is?
oh, I never heard this, but I gotta check. I gotta
You
make a
know,
note
you
of
ever
it.
heard the Humpty song?
No,
The
no.
Humpty Dance is your chance to do the hump, because the guy, one of the guys, he wears big glasses and a big nose and a mustache. That's why, because of what they're wearing. Yeah, Tupac
Y-
actually started. Tupac, I'm sure you've heard of Tupac Shakur. He started with them with Digital Underground, and
mhm.
yeah. Anyway, that was just because of your nose. I had to, what kind of a DJ
Yeah,
would I
yeah,
be if I didn't, the Humpty Dance.
yeah.
Yeah, but so everybody, rest well. If you've only seen the movie, rest well knowing that Cheney and Paul are still together. Their first baby might have died at the end of the first movie, but they're destined to have more children. So I'm sure
They are. Yep.
if they continue this, they're going to have to bring Paul and Cheney back together. I'm sure, because we're going to have some kids or whatever. Well, who knows what direction they'll go in.
Hmm.
Yeah, but that's the overall thing I wanted to talk about, though, is that you know whoever you are, a lot of people that watch this are more into like truth and stuff. So whoever you are watching this, you might know and you might see that the Dune movie's trying to hold all these truths back or paint it in a different way. But you could still enjoy the movie. You could still go out, spend 15, $20, go out with your woman or with your friends and just have a good time. And
Hmm.
that's something I had to learn. I stopped watching TV for about 4 years. Like every once in a while, I'd watch something, but I started to again toward the end of 2023 watch shows, and I have this whole new view of things now. Because before I would just point out stuff, and I would be like, "Oh, look at this is what they're doing, and they're trying to." But now I try to look at the positive things and the good things, and just try to have a good time. I mean, I watch a lot of comedy also, but to sit there and just act like a victim, it doesn't do me any good. It doesn't do anyone around me any good. So that's something I had to learn, and I really had to find out. And I feel like I graduated. And it's funny because I say graduation because we're recording this on 3/11/2024. And I don't know if anybody knows what happened on 3/11/2020, because 3/11/2020 was actually 222 months to the day of September of 2001, September 11th.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but it's been 4 years since we had the world change, because that's when they shut down this country anyway, was 3/11. And I feel like in that 4 years, I've grown a lot as a person and I've learned a lot. And one of the major things I learned is that I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim. No matter what happens or what people out there they try to do, it doesn't matter. I'm not a victim. And, listener, you don't have to be one either. And it really just goes down. The simplest way to do it is to just be thankful in the moment, even when things happen. I got into a car accident, and my first thoughts, I try to keep them positive, and it helped out so much more. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I guess I got to get a new car now, or I guess this is this, or what kind of things can happen, instead of being, oh, woe was me. I got into a car accident and this was terrible. So yeah. Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, those things are. I think those things are initiations of some sort. I have a similar experience. Yeah, with 16 or yeah, I got in a car accident, badly injured. I had an operation, um, and I had to lay in a hospital bed for 4 weeks straight. Like,
Yikes.
get up for anything, with what I mean.
Yeah.
So, and then there was this one moment, when I got home, it hit me because I always used to kind of like in the morning roll out of my bed when I'm, like kind of jump out, do some judo roll and
Yeah, yeah.
out. And I'm like,
As you
fuck, man,
do
I
when you're
can't do
16, you're just like, wow, invincible. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I couldn't do that anymore. And then I'm like, I had to like kind of like slide down and kind of like get up on the foot of my bed with the crutches and everything because my hip was literally torn apart. And um and there it hit me. It was like really shit, man. There's a part of my life. My life has changed fundamentally. I will never be the same again. No, I healed, of course, but it's just um, that moment, and it was like really, and it's basically, I think this is part of what a near death experience is. It hits you, and then the something dies, and then we see, okay, there is a shift. But then yeah, it was shit, and I'm like, no, I don't want to cry or anything or be like this. I'm like, yeah, I get up, and then I use the crutches, and those are the things that we can be grateful for, so many things, and the platitudes now. But it's just, come on, man, this victim mentality, it's disgusting. Go, nobody can tell me in their right mind that they ever see somebody in the victim mentality and they're like, oh, poor baby. Everybody has this inside them. When they see somebody with the victim mentality, they want to kick their face in.
Mhm.
Everybody has this little, at least this little spark in them. They're like, yeah, shut the fuck up with the victim mentality. We don't want. It's annoying, and yeah.
And just to give this a little context, everyone, we're when we talk about victim, mostly we're talking about the spiritual realm and the mental realm. When things happen to people and they internally see themselves as a victim. Now, I always say, like, if you're getting beat up or shot or whatever, then yeah, you are. You could look at yourself as a victim. It's different, but you could still,
Yeah.
even in those moments, you could still not see yourself as a victim in that way. And that's a whole go check out the Oversharing show, guys, if you want more of that stuff. And my website is morelawsmoreproblems.com. You can get more of me there, or you can even click on the Oversharing tab to find out more about that. We're doing a series on the Tao Te Ching. This is a lot of the stuff we talk about with victim mentality. So the reason I said that was, it's not, if someone's listening to this, it's not like Jeff's talking about, like, if you see somebody on TV getting their house blown up or burned down, where we just want to go smack them. We're talking about people
No, no, not
with,
that. No.
with like the woe is me kind of attitude. And when things happen to them, one after the other, it's tough. This world is tough, but I see these challenges really as hurdles. And if you can look at them as hurdles, I feel like your life will get better if you start to overcome them in that way.
Yeah.
I know mine has, so that's all. I just like to throw in a
Yeah.
little.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the background, how I came to that victim mentality. It's really, yeah, always something missing, and I was like really spiritual with 14, getting into Buddhism already, and then I started studying philosophy at the university, and I came to, yeah, study Hegel, Heidegger, Nietzsche. And of course, with Nietzsche, this is not a victim. I mean, I like it when I think it's hilarious that people say he was a soy boy, and I guess he was, but he was so hardcore in his mind, the mindset and everything, and that really got me to think, and that there are so many things. There's a really good reception of Nietzsche's Antichrist book, which is not truly his book in a sense, by like the reception of Rudolf Steiner, and this whole Christianity complex, this whole yeah, Judaism using the victim mentality in order to rule, to be really cunning and really exercising power with disarming people and all. And it's not about it's not an anti-Semitic thing or so. It's just um, it's the interpretation of two scholars who knew a lot more about these things than we do, and that always got me to think. And I always admired strong people, resilient people, and so on. If somebody else wants to be a victim or so, it's okay. The real thing about it is, I never wanted to be a victim, and this is the most important thing to me. I disgust myself when I fall into this victim mentality, and it is a painful state. It's the world becomes a really chaotic, horrible place when I am in a state of victimhood, and I'm there, of course, sometimes. Um, but yeah, it's much more fun to take matters in their own hand and say, yeah, I, I'm not a victim. But yeah, it's a very different. It is hard to explain this in
Yeah,
English.
no, I hear you. But most of the people that watch my show will probably understand. But if someone's coming across this who's not sure who we are, or just interested because of the Dune thing,
Mhm.
like I said, check out the Oversharing Show. You'll love it when it comes to this stuff. Well, I'd like to thank you, Jeff, for coming on. I think we could probably wrap this one up here. We'll keep it a little shorter so people might be more inclined to check out our information. But I hope everybody watches enjoyed it. Shout out to the chat because when I premiere these, we always have the chat going. And thank you guys for hanging out, especially here to the end. If you'd like to support us, the best way, or support me, my channel, is to subscribe, hit thumbs up, comment, let us know what you think. Like I said, go to morelawsmoreproblems.com. There's several ways you could support me there financially if you choose to do that. Thank you very much. But like I said, the best way, or I always say the best way to support us is to just show up here for the conversations, be a part of the conversation, let us know what you think, and if you learned anything or if you have any questions. And thank you again, Jeff, for coming on. I appreciate your time and your insight as I always do. And I look forward to doing more stuff about Dune in the future. So look for that, everybody. And take care. We'll see you next time. I got to get a better way. So the Oversharing Show, we have a good way to end it. The show, I got to think of a fun way to end it. But I guess until then, see you later, everybody. Oh, oops, I almost hit end instead of stop record. All right, guys, see you later. Bye.